2023 is a big year for both India and the US. We're not saying this, but Washington's Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asia is. Speaking to an Indian news agency, Donald Lu had said, and I'm quoting, "This is going to be a big year. India is hosting the G20, the United States is hosting APEC, Japan is hosting the G7. We have lots of our Quad members who are taking on leadership roles, and it provides opportunities for all of us to bring our countries closer together." Big things are planned for this year. Later this month, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will meet US President Joe Biden in Papua Guinea on the 22nd of May. There, the Indian Prime Minister will join Pacific Island leaders for a historic future-oriented meeting. The Papua Guinea meet will be a stopover for both Modi and Biden as they head to Australia for the Quad Summit. That begins on the 24th of May. India, along with the US, Japan and Australia, form the Quad grouping, aimed at countering China in the Indo-Pacific. Earlier in March, Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar hosted his Quad counterparts for a ministerial meeting and extraordinary public events at the Raisina Dialogue. It was the first such public discussion with the ministers. In June this year, the Indian Prime Minister will be visiting the US on an official visit. And later in September this year, US President Joe Biden will be arriving in New Delhi for the G20 summit, as India holds the presidency of the grouping for this year. 5 months into 2023, and we have seen big Washington leaders visit New Delhi. US Secretary of State was in India for the Quad meeting we just mentioned. US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen also visited India, where she called New Delhi Washington's biggest trading partner and a key part of its friend-shoring strategy. In recent times, India and the US relations have developed into a global strategic partnership. The ties are based on shared democratic values, convergence of interests, and especially the cause of taming the dragon, and you know that is China. For the latest on this, joining us live is Raymond Vickery, who is a former US Assistant Secretary of Commerce, Trade, Development, author and advisor on US-India relations. Welcome to the broadcast, Mr. Vickery.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Mr. Vickery, US Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asia, Donald Lu, said recently that 2023 is going to be a big year for India-US relationship. Are we witnessing that already? Is this what it is?
It is. In fact, it should be not just a big year, it ought to be a great year for both countries. And I would point out that this is not something new, but is a continuation of what was started back when I was in the Clinton administration, when we had a visit of President Clinton, and the estranged democracies, U.S. and India, started to come together. And that has been continued on a bipartisan basis. As you know, under George W. Bush, there was the U.S.-India civil nuclear deal. The relations with President Obama were very close. Trump and Modi got along quite well. And now we have the relationship between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden. So the good news is that we've been building. You have to have a strong foundation to build on, and it's all coming together. You have cited the many meetings that will take place. We're particularly looking forward to hosting Prime Minister Modi here in Washington in June, but coming along right after that will be the G20 summit in September. So I think all the stars are aligned for it to be a great year. The question is, are we going to be able to take full advantage of it and have our sights set high enough to achieve what we should?
Right. That gets me to the next question, Mr. Vickery. US has been known for its transactional approach. Now, accepting India's strategic autonomy, is that natural or an exigency for the US?
Well, I think that the transactional approach that you talked about was at the forefront under President Trump. Thankfully, that has not been the case with the Biden administration. There is a recognition that there are two great democracies here who have a lot in common. And it's not just a matter of being able to do something that is of immediate benefit. And of course, the focus, as you've pointed out, has been with China. And there, I think we need to set our sights even higher. And I'm not talking about just in terms of military strategic matters, the sanctity of borders, the respect for the nationhood of other lands, but the whole question of a trade relationship. As you probably know, the trade relationship between the U.S. And China is about 5 times that between the U.S. and India. So there's a lot of scope for growth. Secretary Raimundo has pointed it out, and I think this is an area of great opportunity.
Thank you for joining in on the broadcast, sir. That was Raymond Vickery, who is a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce and Advisor on U.S.-India relations.
Thank you.